Hey, everybody. Welcome to another How to Succeed podcast. I'm your host, Mike Montague at Sandler, and we are talking about how to succeed at building the sales force of the future with Dr. Courtney McCaslin. She is a chief of science and strategy at Octus IQ and one of the co-founders. Octus IQ is one of our partners here at Sandler who helps us navigate deals, improve our forecasting, pipeline, and hiring strategies, making sure we're maximizing our talent and developing our talent in the best ways possible. That's what it's all about today. If you want more information on Sandler, go to Sandler.com. We're the world's leading sales, leadership, customer service training company in the world. More information at Sandler.com. All right, Courtney, we did it. We're here. And I'm excited to talk to you about how we build the sales force of the future. Let's start with your background, Octus IQ, and what we're talking about with AI, intelligence, measurement, and combining that with human soft skills and talent and things that are maybe a little bit more squishy than that. Where do you sit on things like that today?
So Octus IQ is a sales performance company, but we're really different in that we focus on what is it about the person that drives performance. So all of our analytics are around the players and the plays they're running. So it's really about getting underneath what explains success. When you look at your top individuals in every role, what do you need? What are the natural talents they need? And what do they need to learn how to do at excellence if they're going to drive performance in a consistent way? So we've been helping companies around the world do that in every sales and sales leadership role, and excited to talk a little bit about some of the lessons learned.
Yeah, a bunch of stuff to unpack there for sure. And let's start with where we are in impacting sales in 2024. I feel like there's a big lean towards technology, AI, tactics, and stuff. But I also know from the 57-year history of Sandler, and this is why I love partnerships like this, is we kind of bring Octus IQ and all of that great data and intelligence. We also bring the real world communication strategies and psychology of Sandler that I feel like people are not becoming better communicators. And sometimes this tech can get in the way. So I love what you already said about how do we use that to help our salespeople have better conversations or to build better sales teams. Where do you think the ideal attitude is in the balance between tech and data and human psychology and behavior?
Well, that's a great question. To kind of unpack that we all agree there's an art and a science to selling. So there's some things you learn along the way, but the one thing that's kind of the key is we've studied on more than 1.32 million people. And we found that there's actually some certain behaviors that matter more today than they ever did before. And there's certain things you need to do at every step of the selling cycle and learn and know the plays to run and the questions to ask if you're going to get it done and be successful. So the art is really studying what those people who are just exceptional do well, but the science is figuring out how to measure it, to really get underneath what specifically are some questions that we can ask of the individual in the role to learn what they bring to the table in terms of their motivation, how they build relationships, the psychology part you're talking about. And some of that has to do with, like, can you see patterns in data? Do you have learning agility? Can you go out and understand, what's going to happen next? Really have that curiosity to learn about your customer so you get deep, so you can become a trusted advisor. So some of those natural talents are changing right now. And the deal is more complex than it ever was before. So right now, the number of influencers, what you're expected to know, your customer wants you to be a trusted resource. So they want you to have knowledge and deep subject matter expertise. So teaching the individual all of those skills, the critical knowledge and expertise so they can become that trusted resource.
And I am assuming that you're going to say that salespeople are not born and leaders are not born, that they're made. And this is another interesting attitude part of, like, how do we balance that in our head? If we're a sales leader, we obviously want to hire the top talent, but I found that salespeople that say, like, we want to hire salespeople that can and will sell and that they believe that they're made and there's some sort of magic talent, fail there too. How do you balance somebody's natural ability with where we want them to be and closing some of these skill gaps?
So this is kind of that famous nature nurture question. And the reality is, when you study excellence, it's both. Okay. So if you think about that kind of historic the epitome of the rainmaker, right? You've got all that grit and energy, that sales, individual who's like the big personality, strong in relationships, shaking everyone's hand. Those talents, even the courage and persuasion to close the deal, are all critical to success. But some of those kind of personality traits, which is what you're born with, have actually evolved so that you need some new talents also to succeed in the role. But that is what you're born with. And that is important. And actually, historically, that explained more of your success in selling than it does today. Today, what you've learned, your competencies, so through, your at-bats, your experiences around what to do next in a certain moment in time. You have a really tough customer that's pushing back. How do you handle that scenario? All those things that you learn and that you can be taught in training classes, through experiential learning, through just, feedback and coaching from your manager. Those things are explaining more of whether or not somebody's successful in sales than they ever did before. So if you can pinpoint where those blockers are, you can really change the game in getting more deals won.
And same question, I guess, but for sales leaders, what are the top talents, skills required, and behaviors for sales leaders today?
So a really big piece for a sales leader that's different is you need to know your people with intimacy. If you don't understand uniquely the gifts that someone has from a talent standpoint, you can't inspire them. And it's been tough selling lately. So if a manager doesn't know their people and know like how they're hardwired, are they responsible? Are they competitive? Are they somebody who's, really good at building new relationships? Are they better at advising and teaching? If you know the person, you can put them in scenarios and leverage those strengths to win more. You also got to know where their gaps are, because if you're not a deal coach and you don't know how to give them feedback when they're stuck at certain stages of the sale and don't know how to isolate the things that are blocking them, they can never get smarter, better, faster through the opportunity of the sale. So I think a great leader today, more than ever before, needs to know the business. They need to know how to win a deal and coach their people on where they're getting stuck and ask the right questions of their people, just like we have to ask the right questions of our customers.
That's perfect. And I think it takes us right to our behavior section here, where we're talking about that deal coaching and how to do the right thing at the right time. This is more and more important for salespeople. I feel like in today's world, it can be confusing. There's complicated buying cycles and buying teams, but also people are coming to you at all different stages of the buying process, where it was really easy, maybe, and comparatively, maybe 20 years ago, some things were easy, but it was easier to tell that like this person had experience with our product or service, who they are in the organization, what part of this journey are they in, and how much they know about our product or service. Today's world, I feel like it's much more murky and cloudy. And so Octus's Deal IQ product, and this is the one that Sandler is really excited about, can help us identify some of those things. But I guess what comes to mind for you, and how a sales leader or a salesperson can better identify how to do the right thing at the right time when there's all these moving pieces that are almost impossible to follow with just our human cognition. If we're not using some sort of CRM or Deal IQ to coach to these, it's going to get really messy, right?
Yeah, just to simplify it, right? For you to win a game, you've got to understand the players. So you've got to have measurement that only focuses on measuring the things that reinforce you're winning the game. So you got to understand what about that person makes them right in the right position, knowing if they can run a certain play and do it at excellence in a consistent, time. And then to run the plays, you need intelligence about what the best next move is. So our talent IQ gives you insight on the predictive talents and competencies so you can focus your time and energy. And then our deal IQ helps you know during those moments in time, during, you've learned this methodology, what excellence looks like, where are you in that journey, and what are you missing in terms of information, intelligence, or an action that you need to take if you're going to advance the deal. So really gives you insight to deal velocity and real clarity in your forecasting and accuracy, and whether or not you're going to win and whether or not you're going to win on time. And if you're falling behind, what are some of the things you can do to increase your likelihood to win the deal?
I love your metaphor because I think it also speaks to sales leadership, right? That I'm a Chiefs fan and we're coming up on the Super Bowl as we're recording this. So like, you don't want Andy Reid trying to go run the play for Patrick Mahomes. That is not going to work very well, right?
Right.
And so we need these leaders to have this insight in order to ask the right questions and coach them to do it correctly and make sure that they're staying on the sideline. So Andy Reid and the Chiefs organization can choose the right players, but then they
Right.
got to go coach them to run the plays and to solve the problems as they come up. They can't go do that for them. And I feel like that happens way too much with sales leadership. What do you think?
Exactly. And I mean, you look at the best coaches in the world and they individualize. They really get in and they know that each person is motivated differently. They take different feedback differently. Like if one kid's got a lot of courage, you can be really direct. And if they don't, then you got to deal differently in giving them feedback. So when you're looking at coaching styles, you're going to look at which player can run the play in the way that you guys are trying to do it. I'm not a football expert, but it's interesting because when we look at coaches and we look at sales managers, there's so many things because we actually measure the talents of athletes and coaches just like we measure the talents of sellers and sales leaders. And a lot of the things that are really important for a sales individual to be exceptional are important for an athlete to be exceptional. And we actually do work with Division I football organizations and do that kind of work for them as well. And it's just surprising, obviously competition shows up in both, right? Team collaboration shows up in both. A lot of those things that really make a great salesperson are consistent.
I find that too. It's really interesting. With Sandler, there's a bunch of stuff like practicing and role playing, and we need to run through these plays before we go do them live, right? I think far too many businesses just show up and play every day like it's Sunday. But no, you need to take some time during the week to get better and work on these skill improvements, to create a game plan, to pre-call plan and learn more about your clients before you just go out there and make the call. What happens on the call is a result of all of those other things coming together, which I guess leads to another question here for you and wrap up our behavior bucket is, what do the best organizations do consistently to make sure that they win, they inspire, and they grow through their sales talent?
So you've talked a lot. The leader role is really, really critical right now. So one of the things we're seeing as a deficit, there's two competencies that leaders need to be successful in a sales organization today. We talked a little bit about inspiring performance excellence. So that's become increasingly important. If you don't have a way of inspiring each person on your team, if you don't know what their kind of like lever is to get them most engaged, you're not going to get to your goal. The other one is unique. It's called leading sales as a business process. And it's what you were just talking about. Like great athletic organizations create a rigor, they create a cadence. There is an energy around a competitive environment on how do you get results done. And so that's creating that structure. So it's your methodology, and then it's a way to measure how you're advancing against that methodology. So for us, when we work with great organizations, we go in and we figure out how to know what success not only looks like, but how we can build into the fabric of the organization, how to hire against that profile through predictive measurement, how to train and develop and coach. So you're actually uncovering what the person needs to do next in terms of the training they attend and the coaching they go through. And then continuing to remeasure in a way that we link right back to the commercial outcomes. So we know when you increase the scores on the assessments that you actually increase outcome in the business. Then we bring, in terms of those players, we put them right in the context of the plays. So when you're actually running the plays in the pursuits during the game, you're seeing that game film real time. You know exactly what you've done, what you need to do differently, and you can look back and see where you got stuck, and you have access to your training, to your learning journey, the key modules you need to get those reinforcements when maybe you have an area that you just aren't quite as good and not quite as naturally talented.
And I think that's a natural transition to our technique discussion. And I have a few interesting questions for you. As one of the creators and co-founders here and the science expert, can you tell me a little bit about how we tell the difference between like traits and competencies and how these skills roll up into talents? Because I think it can be confusing for some people if they go, well, I answer a question on a quiz, and then how does that translate to, can I actually sell anything in the real world? Can you help us out with the differences between those things and sort of where the magic is in predicting whether somebody can and will actually sell?
Yeah. That's a great question because I think we get caught up sometimes in our HR nomenclature and it's just confusing and people are like, I don't want to have anything to do with this stuff. To get away from that, you have to recognize what actually helps you get better. So when we break apart the things you learn, we talked about what you're born with, those natural patterns. So when you were even as a young kid, you can remember, were you competitive? Did you push hard in these situations when you were up against competition? So you can see traits. If I'm disciplined, I'm really organized as a little kid, I'm putting stuff in order. If I'm not, I don't, right? So you can see these natural talents. So when we look at that natural pattern of thought, feeling, and behavior that explains success, when you're in a sales role, are you courageous? Are you competitive? Do you have this individualizer talent? Are you persistent? Those are all things that you're born with. Okay. They show up and they can become evolved. They can develop them, but they don't change. You don't want to change your scores on that. So that's really using who you are as a piece of input. On the skill side, that's all stuff you learn over time. So we break that out. So when we look at a competency, it's a series of skills that you're trying to build proficiency at a step of the selling cycle. So if I need to be able to get at navigating the deal, I have to know how to align my influencers. So you have training that you can go to that you can learn how to do that. So for everything you have to do during the selling cycle, there are certain skills that will enhance your ability to do that, do it at excellence and build that proficiency. So the strategy is different. On your competencies, you focus on the low stuff, right? Whereas on your talent side, you just try to find those areas you can leverage. Like the best leaders in the world will tell you they've got a few good spots and they stick around those spots. So excellence is knowing how to take who you are and optimize it. Whereas on the skill side, you could become 100% on everything. You could build and master your skills for selling. So it's a different strategy and they're different how you approach them.
I like that. And I guess it takes us to deal IQ again and more of those tactics than that add onto that. So now we're looking at specific situations. And in this particular deal, do we have white knights? Do we have influencers? Do we have a unique selling proposition versus our company? And we're applying those skills and talents that we have. Is that fair? Or how do we improve our tactics in a deal from this information?
So you're right, Mike. When you take the questionnaire, okay, you're going through a series of different kinds of questions. We're unique in that we actually not only measure your natural pathways, your talents, and your skills, but we also put you into critical situations or moments in time for that role. So whatever level of selling role you're in or sales leadership role, we'll take common events and there's actually a predictive response, what the high performers do or say differently at that moment. And then there's distractors, things that aren't bad to do, but they could actually inhibit your advancing the sale, or they could just not be very helpful, right? So we've studied over time what the best performers do in those moments. So you're right, it translates right into your deal pursuit process. And at those moments are when you're having, maybe you have some friction and how do you handle that and how do you deal with that moment in time? So we use those questions at the front end when people are coming into the role. And then we measure your improvement against that to see if you've learned the things you need to learn to know how to execute at excellence.
Good. Now I want to zoom it back out again before we wrap this up and just ask, back more from a leader's perspective. Then if you're thinking about building a sales force of the future, what do we need to do and how do we do that? I think there's several things you mentioned here, from hiring and assessing, and we're training people and improving the skills. We're doing deal coaching on a regular basis. But I guess the question always seems to be more difficult than that of how do we keep people inspired? How do we make sure we're focusing on what really matters here and we're not getting in the weeds? Can you help us out here at all?
Yeah, I think the challenge, like every organization has, is when a leader has a clear kind of value prop for the business and where they're taking the company, a vision, a mission that you're connected to, or, clear goals and future state. The challenge is, how do you line up all your people behind it to get to that outcome, right? So you're just trying to get everyone mobilized. So there has to be a true north. And the true north is that every single one of your success profiles, so the talents and competencies of the people, have to reinforce where you're trying to go. So they actually will deliver on that strategic commercial outcomes. And once you have that clarity, everything has to fit. So that becomes kind of, it pulls through everything a human being does with the organization, how they come into the organization and how they're developed in the organization. And then when you bring it into like the commercial organization, how you're managing your customer, all that same profile, all the things you're trying to reinforce are again the same. So you have a universal language around your methodology. You know what success looks like with the customer, and it's all, we can see where we have a gap. So it really it unites the organization's human capital to the business strategy, and it's all performance based. So it really aligns all the different things you're doing around the company. And it is inspiring because I have a clarity on things I bring that actually contribute to the business success, and I feel valuable because of it.
Yeah, I found working in your sweet spot, you can get it into flow better. It gives you energy when you're not aligned and not in the right role. It's draining your energy and burning you out so much.
Yeah. Sure.
So I love that. Once again, we're talking with Dr. Courtney McCashland at Octus IQ, and I want to get to know you a little bit better. But before we do that, is there anything else I should have asked or that you were hoping to share with us that we missed, or you think people miss when they think about building talent in the sales force?
There's only one thing I'm seeing right now, other than the leadership piece is so critical, and we're doing a lot of work there, but also it's just the way learning happens, right? So for me to learn to do something differently, and right now, because of the landscape, there's some things in sales I need to learn to do smarter, better, faster than I did before. I could have been successful 2 years ago, and now it's different. So the learning journey has to be individualized to get really sustainable performance. So I think the ability to understand the person and make sure as you're going into the training, you have an understanding of where you need to really refine your strategy, approach, and techniques it inspires the learner. It makes them more engaged with the content, but it also delivers more sustained outcome to the commercial outcome. So I think there's something in our technology today, through using AI, through coupling with great targeted training, and then starting with the human being and what they need, we can really get better results through the training and learning journey and the intervention. So I think that's kind of exciting what we have today.
Absolutely. And I think my first question for you on your bio and background, I'm really excited to hear what you have to say with all of the measurement that you've done for this. But how do you define success at this point for yourself in your career?
Oh, for me, I would really just say that the work we're doing in Octus is helping a company really grow their business through their people. So we've had some just incredible case studies over the last few years where, major Fortune 100 companies are using all of our tools as a way to really help each individual in their roles become their best. And not only are the people in each of the different business units getting better results from a team by team standpoint, but it's rolling up that they're hitting, publicly required goals in the company. And we're seeing that happen again and again. In fact, we've done so much research where we've connected the individual to the performance outcomes in the business. And we've never had a time when the people didn't grow when we were looking at a learning journey in terms of their competency, and that growth didn't affect the outcomes of the business. So we know the work we're doing is helping them be better and bring value to the companies they serve. And that's just exciting all around. So that's probably my biggest goal, is to reach more companies and be able to have transformational impact on their business.
Yeah. And when you think back on your career and learning what your natural talents were, was there a biggest hurdle you had to get over, a particularly hard lesson learned, or a failure you're most proud of that taught you a lesson in order to be successful?
Mine has probably been just a consistent small thing that I've had to manage, because I'm a pretty intense personality and I have courage, and it's learning how to kind of manage that in a way that people, even if you have something that's really helpful to say, when and how you say it can determine if they'll listen. So learning how to understand my audience really well and listen before I share my point of view is kind of and then the courage, kind of softening the courage in terms of when and how. So that's my own profile and having to kind of like navigate success through who I am.
Yeah. I'm sure a lot of people, and especially salespeople and leaders, can relate to that one. So I appreciate you sharing. What about a favorite quote, motto, or mantra that you try to keep in mind?
Probably has always been carpe diem, so seize the day. It's just living every moment to its fullest and taking advantage of the opportunities we're given. I think in sales, it's an awesome vocation because everything we do when we're successful in our roles, we create opportunity for all the people around us. And that's a pretty compelling thing. We not only make a difference for our families, but we make a difference for our companies. We create opportunities for everybody who works in the company, right? Because now everybody has a job and they have stability because we've been able to help bring our product or service or solution to a customer and therefore create more opportunity for both the customer and the client. So, and the employees who work for you. So I think it's just a really cool thing.
Love that. Now, Octus IQ is an official partner of Sandler. So if anybody is interested in learning more about what we're talking about today, just reach out to your local Sandler trainer. We have an enterprise group for international companies, and we can get you more information and get you hooked up there. But I want to give you a chance here, since you've been so generous with your time, a free 30-second commercial, or tell us like who you serve best, who you feel like this is you have the best solutions for, or how they would know maybe if they need to reach out. What are some of the common problems or challenges that you help solve?
So I think today, if you have in your sales organization, if you're going through any sort of change in terms of you've defined requirements for your buyer that have evolved, and now you need to kind of sort through the people that you need on board and where they need to be in terms of their talents and getting skilled up to serve at excellence. We just have the tools that can identify your readiness to execute on your goal in a very efficient way. And everything we do is performance-based. So you're not just going to get an idea or a concept. It's actually, we know if you're performing against the profile and your people are matching up and bringing what they need, they're going to be ready to embrace future state and be successful with the requirements of your buyer. So if you're going through that right now, we're really a good partner. We work with a lot of very large enterprise companies. We're in 34 languages around the world, and we get the complexity of having to do that at excellence. So
I love it. Again, that's Dr. Courtney McCaslin from Octus IQ. For more information, go to Sandler.com. Reach out to a local Sandler trainer. The How to Succeed podcast is brought to you by Sandler, the worldwide leader in sales management and customer service training, with over 200 locations around the world, and that enterprise team we mentioned. Again, for more information, go to Sandler.com. As always, you can subscribe, share this podcast with somebody that you think needs to hear it, or leave us a review on iTunes or Google. It's always helpful. Thank you for listening. And remember, whatever you are, be a good one. That's what I always say. We'll see you next week.
All right.